Before we discuss the Jewish view of the events in the Garden of Eden, let's first talk about the Christian view. The Christian view is that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and after they committed the sin became imprinted upon the DNA of all human beings born after them, and only through the belief in Jesus is a person expunged of their sin. According to this belief, the natural state of humanity is sinfulness. Some Christians even take it so far as to proclaim utter depravity, which means a human being is capable of doing absolutely no good for the right reasons. The New Testament teaches that a person's works amount to absolutely nothing, and it is only through belief in Jesus that a person is saved. So Judaism agrees that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and there was some kind of repercussion. The question is, what exactly happened? So in order to understand this, we have to analyze different things that are spoken about in these verses to really understand them. The first thing that we're going to analyze is the serpent, that primordial serpent that came to Eve and engaged in dialogue with her. Who was a serpent? What was he all about? The Bible tells us that he was the most intelligent of all animals. He was able to engage in conversation. He spoke. He was able to talk to Eve with intellect. Moreover, up until the point that he was cursed, he was walking upright like human beings. So what was the snake trying to tell Eve? When the snake approached Eve, he was pointing out to her that she spoke and he spoke. She walked upright and he walked upright. He was made from the dirt of the earth, and so was she. What then separates you from me? What makes me an animal and you something more than an animal? His argument was that she would have to progress beyond the level of animals in order to become more than the animals. She would have to have an innate knowledge of good and evil. To that end, he brought the focus onto the tree of knowledge. Here we have to mention a really important point. Up until this point, Adam and Eve had knowledge that they could sin, but they were innocent. The Bible tells us that they didn't even realize that they were naked. They were like little babies. So how did Eve come to eat from this tree? You see, intellectually, Adam and Eve, they knew that they could sin. But it'd be like telling a person of normal intellect that they can run naked through the street. Of course they could, but they don't have a drive to do that, so it's outside their realm of possibility. The same thing with Adam and Eve. They didn't have a drive toward evil, so doing an actual sin, theoretically they could, but it was still outside of themselves. It was outside the realm of reality. So what was Eve's mistake? You see, the serpent came to her and he asked her the question, did God say you're not allowed to eat from the tree? And she responded and she made a mistake. She said, God said that we're not allowed to eat of it and we're not allowed to touch it. God did not say that she wasn't allowed to touch it. So Jewish sources say that the snake pushed Eve against the tree, and when she saw that she lived after touching it, and the snake said, oh, you touched and you didn't die. So you can also eat it and you're not going to die, but you will become more godly. You will have awareness of good and evil. Once Eve opened up herself to faulty reasoning, it became a rabbit hole of rationalization from then on. That's when she saw that the tree was good for food. Up until that point, she had thought that God forbid her from eating it because maybe it was bitter or poisonous. But then she saw that the tree looks pretty good. It doesn't look poisonous. She didn't die from touching it. So maybe God actually would let her eat from it. And maybe it would be a very good thing for her to eat from it because it's a knowledge of good and evil. And if a person has that knowledge of good and evil, well, they can be better human beings. They can serve God better. She rationalized it just like a parent doesn't want their child to get hurt when he's learning to walk, but the parent wants him to walk. Maybe God didn't want her to eat from that tree because it could be painful or harmful to her in some way. But she felt that she was ready to take that chance. And she felt it was even meritorious for her to take that chance. I'm going to eat from that tree and I'm going to be able to serve God better. I mean, think about it. She had to ask herself the question, why would God have created a tree in the middle of the Garden of Eden that I know about and yet I'm not supposed to eat from unless he actually wants me to eat from it? Like, can you imagine the rationalizations going on here? Ultimately, Eve and Adam ate from that tree, and they underwent a radical change. Here's where Christianity and Judaism take a drastic turn. Christianity says that through this first sin, all people hereby became imprinted with sin upon their soul. Judaism says something very different happened. We have to look at the name of the tree. The tree in Hebrew is called the Eitz Hadas Toiv Vera. Eitz means tree. Das means to know, a very specific type of knowing. And then there's the words toiv, good, ve, ra, and evil. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, das is the same word used when it says Adam knew Eve. It refers to a very, very intimate sort of knowledge, a really knowing. You see, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, they became very intimate with something. What did they become intimate with? Good and evil. At that moment, the drives towards doing sinful things and the drives toward doing good things was inherent in them. Upon eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they became very intimately aware of the struggle to do good and the struggle to do evil that is inherent in every single human being. Every human being has a natural tug of war inside of them. Should I do something selfish, even if it hurts somebody else? Should I do something good, even if it means depriving myself? Should I do something that God wants, or should I do something that I want? Should I engage in something sinful, even though it's fun and pleasurable and enjoyable, but God hates it? They develop the nature of a tug of war. They internalize those drives towards good and evil. They developed a very specific type of morality and the fight to maintain morality. And what the snake had said was true. Through doing this, they were able to progress beyond the point of animals. Animals function through instinct. Nobody is going to tell an animal that it is evil for killing another animal. But if a human being goes and murders a human being, we know that they made a very wrong decision. They committed a sin. Human beings have an awareness of sin that animals don't have, and it's because of this Eitz Hadas. Now, once this drive towards good and the drive toward evil became so enmeshed and internalized in them, and they had to deal with this tug of war inside of them, there had to be another repercussion. And this goes back to another tree that's mentioned in these books of Genesis that you might not have picked up on. Before we get to there, though, we have to speak about what God said would happen when they ate from the tree of knowledge. He told them that on the day that they eat from it, they will die. Now, that didn't mean that they were going to drop dead. And we saw that Adam actually lived for 930 years. So obviously, that did not happen. What he did mean was that the body would begin the dying process. You see, Adam and Eve were created to live for eternity. They were created to be non-mortal. But when they ate from the tree of knowledge, they became mortal. The question is why? You see, God loves us, and he gives us tools for handling this conflict inside of us. And sometimes those tools don't appear to be tools, but they really are. When Adam and Eve were given this newfound war, this new tug of war between the good and evil drives inside of them, God knew that if they were to be immortal, it would lead to very bad things. Can you imagine a very immoral and immortal person? You see, a human being who is invincible can easily spiral out of control. But God knew that when a person encounters pain and suffering, it can cause him to recalibrate in a way nothing else can. That is one of the reasons that we have pain and we have suffering and we have to work hard to procure food, and we worry whether we're going to make it through childbirth, and we worry if our children are going to be healthy and sound. It causes us to seek God, to pray to God, to realize that we are lacking as human beings, that we are mortal. So in order to give us the tools to handle this newfound inclination, this drive towards evil, God created mortality within human beings. And that is actually the reason that God had to banish us from the Garden of Eden. Why? Because inside the Garden of Eden, there was another tree. It was the tree of life. You see, when Adam and Eve were innocent, when they were living in a perfectly sinless state, then it didn't matter if they ate from the tree of life. But as soon as they had this newfound tug of war between the good and evil inclinations, then God said, hey, we can't let you become immortal, because otherwise you'll stop engaging in this tug of war. You're going to stop overcoming this inclination toward evil. So in order to give you the tools to help you recalibrate, to help you connect back to God when you run into trouble, you have to be expelled from this garden. You cannot eat from the tree of life. And so Adam and Eve were expelled. Let's go back and recap this. In short, Christianity says that the eating of the tree of knowledge resulted in all human beings having a sin defect upon their souls, and that the only way they can save themselves is through belief in Jesus. I want to point out really quick for Christians who believe in sola scriptura that you can't find this anywhere in the text. This is a Christological interpretation that is imposed upon the text. Judaism, however, analyzes the verses very, very carefully and draws a drastically different conclusion. We speak about the knowledge of good and evil, and that it became a part of humankind when they ingested it. It became intimately a part of them. And we speak about the tree of life and the reason why they couldn't have access to the tree of life. Ultimately, Judaism rejects the claim that there's an ongoing chain of sin. And it embraces the fact that we have an internal compass inside of us. Even though we have this moral compass, we also have a drive towards evil. We have a drive to do bad things. It doesn't mean we are evil. It means that we have free will. It means that we have choice.